Thank you so much, the organizers of this wonderful webinar, which is so timely. And it's my honor and privilege to be here to talk to Reverend Father, Principal and Vice Principal, the respected faculties, dear friends, and of course the students. Today, I'll be talking about initially the physiological and psychological dimensions of stress. Since we have two more very erudite speakers just after me, so I will mainly focus on the basic things about stress, not exactly stress during this trying times of the pandemic, but which will be taken up a little later. But my this thing, my brief today is to introduce you to the concept of stress in general. Many of the points which have been touched upon so nicely by the previous speakers, but there's no harm in repeating things a bit. So can I share the slides now? Yes, will the host allow me to share the slides? Can I share it?
Yes, ma'am, you can go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Sure. Yes, ma'am. Please,
sure.
ma'am.
Sure. Can you see the slides? Can you all see the slides now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay. Just stop me whenever you think that there's something wrong with the audio or the video, or if the slides are not moving or something. So good evening, all of you once again.
Sure.
We'll be talking about the physiological and psychological dimensions of stress. Stress is now in the air. Everybody is talking about stress. It's not that college students were ever devoid of stress. There were 1001 reasons to get stressed. There were the exams, there were the uncertainty about the future, there were problems with parents and relationships, but now it is like that tiger which is just breathing down our neck, and we really don't know what to do in this situation. So just a second. So if you feel stressed, this is it's a very it's a pictorial representation of stress. This is sometimes what we feel like when we are stressed. A lot of things come crowd in our minds, and we really don't know what to do about it. And this stress sometimes lead to a lot of extreme steps that we take. And this is true for everyone in general, but particularly true for young people. So if you feel you are stressed or you are burned out, this often happens for this burnout happens mostly for little older people like us, working in the same job for years and months together, and sometimes we feel that this is the end of it. So if you feel burned out, or if you feel you are losing it, kind of like this zebra, which is you're losing your personality, you're losing the enthusiasm that you had just because of stress, which could be acute like now the coronavirus stress, but it could also be chronic, something known as a continuous day after day, the same thing going on and on. That could also be a really dangerous, that could also cause harmful effects on our body and our mind. Or if you have seen someone very close by suffer so, please do not ignore it. So if you have the symptoms of stress in you, what are the symptoms of stress? That is what I'm going to take you through right now. Or if you see someone very close by suffer from symptoms of stress, then please let's go through this presentation. Now, for an introduction, because as students, the commonest stress for you is of course studies and exam. Have you ever noticed, you must have noticed actually, that many people react differently to the stress of exam. Some people will react with an angelic face and say it's okay. And some people will just bury themselves deep inside their books. Some people will give up. So it actually, the reaction to a particular stress, for example, in this case, it's an exam. The reaction will vary from student to student. Every teacher knows this, I know this, and I'm sure the academics who are attending it and the students over here are also very conversant with this. That some people are like in this picture. They are very happy studying. The more you challenge them, the better they get. On the other hand, some people just give up, like you see in the second picture. What is it about this that there is what basically I mean to say is that, which comes in the next slide, is that stress is your mind and body's response or reaction to a real or imagined threat event or change. So as a Reverend Father Principal was saying, that it is the perception which matters. The same event, you might see that like somebody who's admitted, I have been seeing as a psychiatrist, I have been seeing patients who have been admitted in a hospital with COVID-19 infection, and somehow they have struggled and they have come out, they're now clear, all their reports are negative, but because of the 20 days of 15-20 days of this stress, they have reacted in different ways. Some people have said it's God's grace that have come back unscathed. Some people have said, I could have died. Oh my God, what would have happened to my family? So it is your perception or your reaction to a particular event which will define whether you will be stressed or not. Therefore, what could be the causes of stress? Some of the causes of stress, of course, as all of you will tell me, like you see in the first picture, at the final exams, the job clubs. But as of now, it is the stress of having to, we don't really know, we have to do online classes, when our exams will come by, whether someone in the family or I myself may get infected, and the stress of being cooped up in a particular place, not being able to move out. These are all examples of stress from the outside. On the other hand, stress can also happen from inside. I'll give you an example. Let's say you are studying in a particular course, and then at the end of the course, you can't take a decision whether you're going to do an MBA or you're going to opt for a job straight away, whether you're going to remain in your country or you're going to go out. So these are nothing external. Everybody sees, many people sometimes will tell you, why should you be stressed? You are so happy, you've got a brilliant result, you've got a loving family, but you only know from inside that there's something that is bugging you. You cannot take a decision. Sometimes you can also have an ideological conflict. For example, you are in a job, you know that you have to do something in order to get a promotion, but your conscience is not agreeing to do that. So when that happens, that becomes a conflict from within. So stress, the threat, event, or change that causes the stress reaction in our body or mind are known as stressors. These stressors could be internal, like I just now said, a conflict within my own body. Everything is hunky-dory outside, but internally I'm, getting slowly burnt out. Something is chewing at my conscience, or I can't take a decision. Or external, which is very obvious to everybody. It could be a loss, a tragedy, or a sudden change. Now we come to the next slide. Is all stress bad? Tell me something. Is all stress bad? The answer to this is no. Not all stress is bad, actually. If you did not have stress, would you have moved forward in the journey of life? If you were happy with everything, just whatever you are getting to eat and sleep, whatever you have got a basic comfort at home, and you say, I'll spend my whole life like this. I have everything and I'm not going to do. But that is not something. Many people will have the fire inside. The scientist who wants to give up everything and spend all his time in the laboratory. The person, the social worker who wants to give up the comforts of life and work among the underprivileged. He did not have anything. He did not have anything wanting in his own life. But it was the stress, the stagnation. The stress of stagnation is also sometimes necessary. Otherwise, we can't move forward. So moderate levels of stress may actually improve performance and efficiency. Before an exam, if you're not at all stressed, are you going to study? Unlikely. So that's what people say, that too little stress may result in boredom also. So if you have to improve your performance and efficiency, for example, before an exam, you have to have stress. Similarly, in a life which is just the same thing going on over years and months together, that kind of boredom or stagnation also can be, it can result from too little stress, too little challenge. No challenge at all in life is not a good life. Too much stress, on the other hand, may cause an unproductive anxiety level. So a little amount of anxiety is good. Challenge is also good. We must face up to the challenge. But if the stress becomes too much, then it becomes unproductive in the long run. This is a curve that shows the stress performance curve. Along the x-axis, you can see it is the stress. As stress increases, performance initially increases only. You were laid back to begin with, inactive, and then after a point of time, when stress is optimum. You can see the green part is too little stress. If there is no stress, you are kind of inactive. You are laid back. On the other hand, when there's just the right amount of stress to, to just push you, a gentle push or nudge towards more activity, then you start feeling good. On the other hand, at a point of time when the stress becomes a little too much, you start developing fatigue. Like you are studying for an exam, you are keeping awake maybe till late at night and all those things. But then if this goes on and then the exam suddenly gets postponed, do you like it? Not many people will like it, because they find that keeping awake and studying so much, taking cups of coffee for 15 days is okay, but when it becomes more than a month, fatigue sets in. Too much stress, therefore, as you can see in the orange part of the curve, causes exhaustion, and we are tired and burnt out, as we say. And finally, what we develop is severe anxiety, anger, and sometimes just breakdown. So this is the typical relationship between stress and performance. I'll give you an example. This is very commonly cited. They say that if the cocoon remained within its cocoon, just eating and sleeping and eating and sleeping, and it did not take the pain to break away from its shell, then if within the cocoon, if the pupa remained, then it would never become a butterfly. So if you ask the pupa to remain within the cocoon, stay safe, stay happy, no challenge, nothing, then it will forever remain a pupa. In order to become a butterfly, you have to break open your cocoon. That will entail some amount of pain, some amount of stress. So just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. This is one metaphor you can always remember when you are in the middle of stress. Probably this stress will make us emerge stronger and more beautiful in life. Some of the myths of stress, something that we have already covered. I'll just go through a quick summary. 1, all stress is bad. No, all stress is not bad. A little bit of stress is always good. Stress will not hurt you. It will hurt you. You will have, people telling you, we have also, parents tell us, teachers tell us, we have also gone through a lot of stress. A little bit of stress will not hurt you. True. A little bit of stress will not hurt you. But when it becomes too much of a stress, then it is going to hurt you. And that's what we are going to discuss in the subsequent slides. Third, what stresses you out also stresses me out. No. Not at all, because individual perceptions vary. Like we said in the first slide, that just before an exam, some people move around happy and bindas. Others are just, they are kind of, they're losing their nerves and all that. So you can't possibly say that if I'm not stressed, what stresses you out? People vary. There are individual variations in human psychology, and we have to acknowledge that. We have to hold hands of people who are stressed. We can't tell them you are weak, you are, you are weakling kind of. So you have to get up and do it all by yourself. No, some people need a little bit of hand holding and a little bit of help, and we are here to offer them that. The fourth one, no symptoms, no stress. This is not true. Sometimes you can find out people moving around, they have a smiling face, they're doing everything, they're saying yes sir, yes ma'am to everything, but inside they're very, very stressed. Stress can be a silent killer. I have seen many, not just among students, also among busy executives and all, they're doing extremely well. Their career is running wonderfully. But then when I check the blood pressure, I find it has shot up. I find the bad cholesterol has gone up like anything. So it is important that stress can sometimes cause harm to us silently. So we have to sometimes get ourselves checked. There are means and ways to find out whether we are stressed or not. I'm sure you will be learning a bit about that in today's sessions as well. And only major symptoms of stress are harmful. No, not at all. Not always in our lives do we face a pandemic, but there are small stresses in life also. Living in a house you don't like at all. Studying a course which you are not, which is not to your liking, or, having to please someone whom you don't really like. All these small minor stresses can also eat at our own personality. And what we develop is burnout. So chronic stress, small stress is also very important, and we cannot ignore them. One day suddenly, like the proverbial Campbell straw, you will break. Just a small thing and you can just snap it. Snap. Now we come to the mechanisms by which stress affects our body. So I thought as a doctor, I'll just give you a small introduction, a small idea. There's no harm in knowing it because knowledge is power. So how does stress affect our body? I just now discussed that some people will have silent rise of blood pressure and bad cholesterol and even increased sugar just because they're being a little stressed, chronically stressed, and they don't even realize it. So what are the mechanisms by which stress affects our mind or body? There are three ways in which they do. One is what we call the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. The second is the sympathetic nervous system. And finally, stress also affects our immune system. If you are having a look at this slide, if you remember, there's something known as evolutionary psychology. So if you look back, let's talk about our forefathers. The ancient man, our forefathers had to really struggle just to survive. So have a look at this picture. An animal is trying to chase one of our ancestors, and he's running at top speed. So what could be his reaction to this? There could be just two ways of reacting. One is fight. You have to fight with the stress or the tiger who's coming your way. And another very important, this is also an important form of response, stress response, which is known as flight. So when you are facing stress, you can either fight with it or you can fly, run away from it. And it's not always a bad thing to run away. If you find your adversary is too powerful, in that case, you really have to choose flight as the correct response. So we must have the wisdom to understand whether in this particular situation, I should fight it out or I should take a temporary strategic retreat. I should fly from the situation. They say that I must have the valor I must have valor to change things for things that I can change, and serenity for the things that I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. That is extremely important. We must have the wisdom to understand that this particular stress, should we take it head on, or should we take a temporary strategic retreat to come back later to combat with this particular form of stress? Now, let us talk about the fight response. When we have decided to fight with a formidable enemy, then our body will immediately, our brain understands that we are about to fight with someone who's pretty strong. So immediately our body will gear up without even us knowing it. I'll not tell my body, come on, gear up or something like that. It is just my brain will instruct the rest of the body. What happens? The brain will immediately, there's something known as hypothalamus in the brain. Hypothalamus will send a signal to the pituitary gland somewhere around the base of the brain. And the pituitary gland will then send signals to the adrenal glands, which are very close to our kidneys. We have got a pair of adrenal glands. So that is what is known as the hypothalamus, pituitary, somewhere around here, and the adrenal axis. As a result of this response, what happens? A number of things happens. If you have a look at this particular picture, the flow of saliva decreases. That's why if you are extremely stressed, have you seen your mouth turns dry? Before a job interview or an examination, the saliva flow decreases, your mouth turns dry. Your eyes become, sometimes you can see things are becoming a little hazy. Basically what is happening, your body is preparing you so that your pupils are dilating. So a lot of light can enter your eyes so that you can get an overall perspective, a visual perspective is better. The blood vessels will constrict, and so we'll start having sweat. Sometimes we break into cold sweats when we are fearful. But it is actually a good thing. What the body is doing, it is taking away blood from our skin and sending it to our brain and our heart and our lungs. Because this is a crisis, so instead of giving warmth to the skin, the heart must pump faster. Even if I want to fight, even if I want to run away, my heart must pump faster. I must breathe faster. So the body, it prioritizes. It takes away blood from the skin and sends it to the heart. So what happens? Heart beats faster and harder. The lungs, when we take quick, deep breaths, and also to the stomach, happens, our digestive enzyme output decreases. That is specifically why we say when there is stress, our digestion suffers. So any hospital emergency, when we are treating somebody who is in stress, whatever be the cause, even before a surgery, we always give injection ranitidine, something that reduces the gastric acid secretion. Because when we are stressed, once again, digestion stops. The body tells this is not the time for digestion. This is the time to fight or flight. Food movement, bowel movement slows down, so food moves slowly. Our muscles becomes more tense, so we are ready to fight. And our blood vessels also, our blood pressure also increases because there is constriction of the blood vessel. So as you can see in this picture, even without us knowing it, the hypothalamus or our brain somehow makes us battle ready within a jiffy. All these things will happen within a few minutes. So that is very, very important. We also have the sympathetic nervous system. In addition to the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal system, we have the sympathoadrenomedullary system. So what happens, the hypothalamus not only sends a signal to the adrenal gland, it also sends signals to the sympathetic system, nervous system of our body. And as a result, we get the stress hormones, the stress neurotransmitters, noradrenaline rushes through our body. Noradrenaline makes us more aware. It prevents us from dozing off. So when you are stressed, you can't sleep properly. Before an exam, it's very difficult to sleep because our body is telling us the sympathetic nervous system is so active. There's a rush of adrenaline in our body, and it's telling us this is not the time to sleep. Keep awake, keep awake. And of course, this is very important in today's perspective, I think, when we're in the middle of this pandemic, that we have got two forms of immunity, which is one is humoral immunity, which is antibody mediated, and the other is cell mediated immunity, where we involve the lymphocytes, the T lymphocytes and other lymphocytes. Remember that stress affects our immunity. Initially, it boosts our immunity. Acute stress, absolutely right when Reverend Father Principal was saying, acute stress improves our immunity. But when this stress becomes chronic, it starts taking a toll on our immunity. That's why people are saying if you are chronically stressed, your immunity is going to suffer. So if you have a severe infection, you are unlikely to walk through it smoothly if you are chronically stressed. So stress affects, acute stress boosts our immunity for a few days. But chronic stress will, in the long run, adversely affect our immune system. So as a result of all these things that are happening in our body, biologically, stress affects nearly every part of your body. If you start from the brain, top downwards, stress causes depression, an increased risk of stroke. It causes fatigue. It causes premature aging. Chronic stress causes premature aging. Asthma, those who have asthma, existing asthma, they know that when they're stressed, their breathing problems increase. There could be circulation problems in the blood circulation, hormones imbalance, high blood sugar, stomach ache, and a weakened immune system. The reproductive system is also affected by chronic stress. You tend to gain weight. Sometimes you lose weight also. And there is also an increased risk of heart attack. As we just now said, there could be increased acid reflux and acidity in the middle of if you have too much stress, unhappiness, and other reproductive system related problem, both for men as well as for women. So we can, this is just a repetition of the previous slides, but I'll just go through the medical illnesses that stress can have. Before, at the top of everything, we can have neurological, mostly psychiatric symptoms like depression, insomnia, irritability, inability to concentrate, and other mental health disorders as a result of stress. Continuously fast beating heart can result in palpitation or rise in blood pressure, increased risk of high cholesterol and heart attack. Stomach ache, heartburn, increased or decreased appetite. When it affects the pancreas, it causes an increased risk of diabetes. And in the intestines, as we said, bowel movement is also dysregulated. So if you can have both diarrhea and constipation when you are stressed. All the reproductive organs are affected. Women can have irregular or painful periods, reduced desire. For men, it could be reduced desire and erectile dysfunction. So you can see that initially the movements of stress, initially the effect of stress is actually gearing us up both for a fight or a flight response. But if the stress goes on for, remains for a long time, then the body can't sustain it. You can't keep on running for days, and you can't keep on fighting for days. So sometimes it happens that too much of a stress for years, for let's say for a few days or a few months, will affect every other system of your body. No system is exempt. Every physical symptom, all the medical illnesses can occur as a result of stress. Now we are coming towards the end of this presentation. And this slide is also equally important. What are the psychiatric illnesses that can be associated with stress? I'll just enumerate them in this slide and then go on to the next slides to quickly explain each one of them. We can have acute stress disorder, adjustment disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, dissociative or conversion disorder, somatoform disorder, depression, anxiety, and even psychosis as a result of stress. Now let's go through each of them quickly. Let's say when there is a severe acute stress. This is, many of you will recognize, this is Pablo Picasso's Guernica. And something like this, a war or a pandemic, something that we are going on, that we are going through right now. When everything goes topsy-turvy and there is an acute severe stress, we often react with what is known as acute stress disorder. Like, let's say somebody who has, I remember a young boy, he was, he was not studying or something, and his brother was chasing him up the stairs. So he ran up to the rooftop, and just to run away from his brother, he was almost toppling. He could have died then and there. Somehow at the last moment, his brother caught hold of his hands and it was prevented. So imagine the amount of stress he went through in those few minutes when he could have very well died had he not been caught by his brother. He came to me. He didn't even come to me. I was referred by the doctor, the surgeon at the hospital, and he just could not recognize anyone. He said, I don't know, this is my brother, this is my mother. I don't know, I can't recognize any one of them. And another case I remember, that she was talking with her friend, and the friend was struck by lightning, and she was saved, but the friend died. And then we saw her, she was admitted in the ophthalmology ward, in the eye department, and she could not see anything. And the eye specialist couldn't find anything wrong with her eyes or the optic nerves. It was entirely an acute stress disorder where, it has just shut down. Somehow, probably her body was saying, I just don't want to see things. Something that she saw was too much for her. So these symptoms, when you are just in a state of daze, when you can't recognize people, when you develop symptoms which are totally unexplained, this is what is known as an acute stress disorder. This usually lasts for a few days to maximum 1 week, and with the right kind of treatment, acute stress disorder can be treated very well, and it can be resolved within a matter of a few days. But supposing you have seen an accident. This very commonly happens in the hospitals where I work. Let's say the whole family was traveling, and then the father died, and something like that. Usually what happens is small children, because everybody wants to protect them, the small children survive an accident. The elders die. So supposing somebody has witnessed something extremely traumatic in his or her life, then what happens? They develop the symptoms of what we call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. What are the symptoms of PTSD? One is re-experiencing. It's like a flashback. Every time when I'm alone, like a flashback, the scene comes to my mind. You can also have nightmares. You can't sleep because in dreams, you are continuously having those nightmares. And when you are not having flashbacks or nightmares, you have something known as hyperarousal. You are sitting, suddenly there's a creaking of the door and you just jump up. Or, there's something, very small thing happens and you react excessively to it. This is known as hyperarousal. At the other end of the spectrum, it could be an emotional numbing. People become very numb. They don't even respond. They become, they say life is useless. So I'll not respond to anything at all. And what is traumatic for you may vary. Of course, if it is an accident, if it is death that you have, noticed, like in COVID, it is happening. People, when they're getting admission to the hospital, they don't know whether they're going to come back alive or not. This is enough to cause what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes very small things can also cause PTSD, but that is not our point of discussion today. But remember that after a stressful situation, like in this situation, somebody who just got admitted or lost a loved one will have these flashbacks, nightmares, emotional numbing, or hyperarousal. PTSD is not as easily treated as acute stress disorder. And the earlier we intervene, the better. So it's better to identify PTSD at the earliest and bring them to the attention of the psychiatrist so that long-term effects don't set in. Now we come to something less dramatic that is known as a chronic adjustment disorder. What is a chronic adjustment disorder? I think I have discussed this a little before, that when chronically you are going through some kind of stress, like a job you don't like, or a place you have to live in but you don't like it at all, or a family member who's being very rude to you day after day, but you cannot say anything because of the fear of retribution. This chronic stress can lead to chronic adjustment disorder. So you remain unhappy for days and months on end, or you develop unexplained symptoms like backache, insomnia, and so on. Sometimes this is a classic case of chronic stress leading to what we call as dissociative symptoms. As you can see, the lady at one corner of this picture. This is a famous picture. This is actually Dan Charcot. He was a neurologist in the early 20th century. And he would demonstrate that some of these Victorian ladies, they would faint and fall and swoon, but there was nothing wrong with their nervous system. It was just that chronic stress they were having, and they had no other way of expressing their distress. Now, not in our country, not all women have the the luxury to swoon and fall, but we also do have dissociative or conversion disorders. Have you seen people having trances or possession? Sometimes we have seen many women who are actually women or men sometimes say that they when they're into these trances, they say many things. They say that I'm going to hurt somebody, I'm extremely powerful, and all those things. Such trance and possession disorders are actually the result of chronic stress, when you cannot articulate your pain, when you cannot articulate your stress. Most of the times studies have found out that this is the case. Now that we have gone through the medical symptoms of stress, the medical illnesses that can be caused by stress, the psychological disorders that can be caused by stress, and have tried to give you a bird's eye view, so that if you find someone around you who is suffering so, or if you are having any of these symptoms, then please feel free to contact a mental health professional or your school counselor or your college counselor, so that you can get the right kind of help and a timely help. Now, I'm sure the next two speakers will talk about stress management. I'll not go into it. Just from a doctor's point of view, I'll try to give you a few quick tips. One is the benefits of exercise. There's no doubt, man, there's a lot of science behind it. Many people say that when you people don't know the answer, you tell us that you have to have a balanced diet or an exercise or something, basically because doctor, you don't have a medicine to it. So I tell them this is not the case. There is clear, solid scientific evidence why exercise and balanced diet is important. Exercise increases the production of neurochemicals that promote brain cell repair. Exercise improves memory, lengthens attention span, boosts decision-making skills, and prompts growth of new nerve cells and blood vessels. So this is important. What kind of exercise? They say that something known as isotonic exercise. The best would be walking. If possible, running, but at least a brisk walking 20 minutes a day is good enough to give you all these positive benefits of exercise. Always remember, diet, the gut or the intestines are known as the mini brain. They are a mini brain, they say. And so what is happening inside our intestine strongly reflects what is happening inside our brain. And there is clear scientific reason behind it. We have seen that if you have what is known as a Mediterranean diet, which basically means a lot of fresh vegetables and the fish and other kinds. For vegetarians, there could be other options too. A Mediterranean diet is known to protect us from stress. It gives us immunity against a number of illnesses, particularly heart disease and so on, and also against Alzheimer's disease. Many of you know probably what is known as Alzheimer's dementia. After a certain age, people start forgetting. They initially started forgetting everyday day-to-day phone numbers and car keys and all that. And then this progresses to a lot more severe forgetfulness when they start forgetting previous events in their life, even forgetting their near and dear ones. It has been clear to prove that a balanced diet particularly protects us against Alzheimer's and also the various forms of cancers, and definitely against heart attacks. This is and there's another thing, something known as, there's a lot of research going on in psychiatry about the role of probiotics. Our gut contains, our intestine contains a number of healthy bacteria, and the diet that promotes the growth of healthy bacteria in our intestine is actually a good diet. And some of the probiotics could be curd or banana or oats and things like that. There are many other things we can discuss it. You can actually see it in the internet that adding probiotics in your diet actually helps your intestine to function better. And because intestines are the mini brain, the intestine has got a very close connection with the brain. It increases something known as GABA level in the brain and reduces anxiety, and it also boosts our immunity. There's something known as epigenetics. Many people say, if I'm born with a particular faulty gene, then there's nothing that can help me. No, my friends, even if you have a gene for a particular disorder, there's something known as epigenetics. The study of epigenetics tells us that if we have the right kind of diet, the genes are actually DNAs, and the DNAs are wrapped around by chemical tags. If we cannot change our genes, but we can target those epigenes, the chemical tags around our genes. If we make them if they can be very tightly wrapped around a particular gene, then its expression can be halted. And this epigenetics, this is known as the study of epigenetics, what we can do to prevent expression of bad genes in our body. This can be done by a number of diets like soybeans, broccoli, turmeric, our very good old turmeric, and also garlic and so on. So epigenetics, there's a lot of study, like I said, and it is important for us. These are particularly the reason why diet is so important. Cut down on sugar, caffeine, and processed foods. Eat nutritiously. All food groups have a balanced diet. You can't say I'll only take carbohydrates or I'll only take fat. Especially include fresh fruits and veggies. Eat a little every couple of hours or so, and eat slowly. That's very important. When you eat, please eat with the pleasure of eating. Eat slowly. Please don't multitask. While you are eating, don't look at your mobile or try to look at your watch. Give a little bit of time, half an hour for your meals. So that is very important. Eat slowly and enjoy eating. Other things like time management and changing the way you think and something known as acceptance and commitment. These are all other ways which will be discussed. Benefits of stress management is not just handling stress. So today, if you learn the stress management, not only will you navigate this COVID crisis better, but you will also emerge a much stronger individual. Your physical health will get better. Your emotions will stabilize, and your ability to focus and concentrate will also improve. So the bottom line of today's presentation, Hans Selye, the father of stress research, famously said that the only one who does not have stress is a dead man. So we all have stress, and it's good. Stress is inevitable. Buddha once famously, a lady who had lost her son came to Gautama Buddha, and said, I'm so sad. Then he said, please go to a house and bring me a fistful of mustard from that house which has not witnessed death. So lady came back after a long search, said, Buddha, I cannot find a single household which has not faced death. So this was his way of telling his disciples that stress is inevitable. There is not a single household which has not ever witnessed a single stressful event. Let's therefore understand stress and manage it, because we must remember that life is just too good. We cannot give up on life so easily. Thank you so much for giving me a patient listening, and St. Xavier's for giving me this opportunity to address this audience. Thanks again.